When my husband was promoted to director at his company and started earning a salary of $9,000 a month, he told me arrogantly, "From now on, we're managing our own finances. My salary is going straight into my personal account." I smiled and said, "Okay," but I was sure he would come to regret his own greed. The roar of a luxury sports car's engine tearing through the afternoon tranquility was deafening. Claire, kneeling in the front yard tending to the dead leaves on her flower bushes, didn't even need to look up. She knew exactly who was arriving. It was her husband, Chad. The way he gunned the accelerator even just to pull into his own driveway was always loaded with arrogance, as if the asphalt was a racetrack to be conquered. The car door slammed shut. The sound of his expensive new shoes bought last week echoed presumptuously across the porch tiles. Claire remained silent. Her nimble fingers plucked another withered leaf. She could feel Chad's gaze burning into her back. It was no longer a look of love, but a mixture of superiority and disgust. "Still playing in the dirt," Chad snapped. It wasn't a question, but a declaration. Claire finally stood up, dusting the soil from her gardening gloves. She turned and smiled the patient smile she always wore. Her simple house dress was a little disheveled, but her face was serene. "You're home, honey. Should I draw you a hot bath?" Chad snorted and didn't answer. His eyes scanned Claire's figure from head to toe, a plain dress, dirty gloves, a face without makeup. He compared it to himself, a new suit from a top designer, a gleaming imported shirt, and on his wrist a watch that cost as much as a motorcycle. "Look at me, Claire," he said, striding inside. He tossed his briefcase onto the sofa, deliberately making it thud. The car keys clattered sharply on the glass coffee table. "I'm looking," Claire replied. "Yes, honey." "What is it?" "What news do you think I'm bringing?" Chad said, his chest puffed out. He loosened his tie but didn't take it off. He wanted Claire to see how important he was. Claire feigned a thoughtful expression. "It seems like good news. You look very happy." "Happy? Of course I'm happy." Chad let out a forced laugh. "Claire, from today on, you'll have to call me director. I've been officially promoted." He said each word with emphasis. "Congratulations," Claire said with the same smile. "That's wonderful, honey. I'm so happy for you." "Just happy." Chad stepped closer. Only an arm's length separated them now. He could smell the earthy scent on Claire's clothes, and it disgusted him even more. "Do you know what my salary is now? $9,000 a month. And that's just the base pay, not including bonuses and expense accounts." Claire nodded. "That's a real blessing, honey." "Of course it is. And since I've reached a new level now," Chad paused deliberately, savoring the moment, "I think it's time we set some new rules in this house." Claire waited. Her heart was pounding not with fear, but with anticipation. This was the moment she had been waiting for. "From today," Chad pointed a finger at Claire's chest, "our finances will be managed separately. My $9,000 salary will go entirely into my personal account, an account that I will manage myself." He looked into her eyes, searching for fear, for panic. He wanted his wife to beg. "You just take care of your own needs. Maybe I can give you $1,000 or $2,000 a month for household expenses. That should be more than enough for someone who spends all day playing in the dirt." A moment of silence fell. Only the hum of the air conditioner could be heard. Chad was still waiting for a reaction. He imagined Claire crying, screaming, accusing him of being unfair. He had 1,000 prepared responses to shut her down. But Claire, after a brief pause, just smiled. Her smile was faint, almost imperceptible. "Okay," she said. "Just one word." Chad was stunned. "What?" "Just okay, yes, honey," Claire said softly. "It's your money. You have every right to manage it. I have no right to stop you." Claire's calmness infuriated Chad. He hadn't gotten the fight he wanted. He felt dismissed. "Good that you know your place," he shouted. "Now go run that hot bath and make me a coffee. From the imported beans I bought yesterday. Don't use that cheap blend garbage of yours." With that, Chad turned and strode arrogantly toward their bedroom. Claire stood in the same spot for a few seconds. Her patient smile slowly faded. Her eyes, once serene, were now as cold and sharp as ice. She heard the bedroom door slam and the sound of the shower turning on. As soon as she was sure Chad was occupied, Claire moved. She didn't go to prepare the bath or the coffee. She reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out a cell phone. It wasn't the old one with the cracked screen she used in front of Chad. This was the latest model smartphone, slim and gleaming. Her fingers moved rapidly across the screen, sending a short text to a number saved as Legal Team. The message contained only 2 words, tonight. The reply was almost instantaneous. Everything is ready as you ordered, ma'am. Claire deleted both messages in an instant, slipped the phone back into her pocket, and then walked to the kitchen, not to serve her husband, but to pour herself a glass of water. She needed to clear her head. Her plan had just begun. She looked at her reflection in the dark kitchen window. "You're going to regret your greed, Chad," she whispered into the darkness. "You're about to learn that separating finances is far more painful than you ever imagined." The next day, the atmosphere in the house was colder than usual. Chad acted like he was king. He deliberately left wet towels on the bed, spilled some coffee on the floor without cleaning it, and spoke constantly in an imperative tone. He was clearly reveling in his newfound power. Claire, for her part, played the role of the submissive wife to perfection. She picked up the towels, cleaned the spilled coffee, and answered every command with a, "Yes, honey," showing no resistance, no complaint. Her serenity was so perfect that it made Chad feel a slight, inexplicable unease. That evening, Claire was in the kitchen preparing dinner, but the aroma wafting out wasn't from a gourmet kitchen. She was simmering a large pot of lentil soup, preparing a simple salad, and had set out a block of sharp, strong-smelling cheddar cheese. Humble food that reminded her of the times before Chad was blinded by money. Chad having just finished a long call in his office, loudly of course, so Claire would know how busy he was, came out and sniffed the air. "What is that smell?" he asked, frowning. He walked into the kitchen and saw the food on the table. His face soured instantly. "Claire, are you serious? Now that I'm a director making $9,000 a month, you're serving me lentil soup and salad." Claire turned from the pot. "Why, honey? Didn't this used to be your favorite meal? Used to be, back when I was a nobody. Things are different now," Chad yelled. "You're doing this on purpose, aren't you, trying to humiliate me? You didn't like my decision yesterday, did you?" "I just cooked with what was in the fridge, honey," Claire answered calmly. "Don't make excuses," Chad snarled. "You should have gone grocery shopping, bought some filet mignon, some wild-caught salmon, expensive ingredients. What's wrong with you? You're a wife who doesn't know how to support her husband." Before Claire could answer, the doorbell rang sharp and insistent. Chad grew even more irritated. "Now who is it? Did you invite someone over at this hour?" "I didn't invite anyone." The bell rang again, longer this time, followed by a high-pitched female laugh from outside. Chad and Claire looked at each other. They both recognized that voice. Chad rushed to open the door. Sure enough, his mother Karen and his sister Tiffany were on the doorstep with wide smiles. They were holding several shopping bags empty as if waiting to be filled. "Chad, my boy, my proud new director," Karen immediately enveloped her son in a dramatic hug, planting exaggerated kisses on both his cheeks. "Congratulations, sweetie. Mom is so proud of you." "Congrats, Chad," Tiffany chimed in, her eyes scanning the house, appraising the furniture. "Wow. So now we can all go on that trip to Italy, right?" Chad grinned from ear to ear, his ego inflated to the maximum. He momentarily forgot about the lentil soup. "Mom, and you, Tiffany, come in. You could have called. It's a surprise," Karen said, striding in and handing her purse to Claire, who had just come up behind Chad. "Here, hold this. It's heavy." Claire took the purse without a word. "Wow, we got here just in time. You were about to have dinner," Karen said, heading straight for the dining table without being invited. Laura followed. Chad's face went pale as his mother approached the table. It was too late. Karen lifted the lid of the soup tureen. Her eyes widened. There was a stunned silence. And then, "What is this?" Karen shrieked, her voice climbing several octaves. "Lentil soup and salad, Claire, what are you thinking? Are you trying to poison my son? You're doing this on purpose. Your husband just got promoted to director with a $9,000 salary, and you feed him this." Tiffany joined the attack. "Oh my God, Claire, this is just too much. Chad is an important person now. You should have made a steak or at least ordered takeout from a 5-star restaurant. This is peasant food." Terribly embarrassed. Chad felt cornered. He needed a scapegoat, and there was only one in the room. "She's deliberately humiliating me," he snarled, pointing at his wife. "I told you earlier, Mom, she's doing it on purpose. She doesn't like that I got promoted. She's jealous." Karen glared at her. "You should be grateful to have such a successful husband. You should know your place. You're nothing without Chad. You should be treating him like a king." Tiffany added, "Right, sister-in-law. Before, when Chad's salary was normal, you were normal. Now that Chad is successful, you need to step up too. Put on some makeup, cook nice things. What is this? The whole house stinks of stew. It's giving me a headache." The three of them, Chad. Karen and Tiffany now surrounded Claire, accusing her, insulting her, berating her. Claire stood silently in the middle of them. She bowed her head for a moment, but if anyone had looked closer, they would have noticed a slight tremor in her shoulders. It wasn't a tremor of crying, but of suppressed laughter. She lifted her head, and for the first time that night, she smiled. A serene, confident smile. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said. Her voice was clear and crisp, cutting through all the previous insults. The three of them stopped, surprised by her reaction. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding," Claire continued. Chad scowled. "What do you mean? The lentil soup, the salad, and the cheese?" Claire gestured to the table. "This is for me. This is what I felt like eating." Karen glared. "And what are we supposed to eat? Are you indirectly kicking us out?" "Of course not, mother-in-law," Claire said gently. She glanced at the kitchen clock. It had been exactly 15 minutes since their arrival. "Your food," Claire smiled, this time more broadly, "is on its way." Just as she finished her sentence, the doorbell rang. Ding-dong, ding-dong. A firm professional chime, very different from Karen's insistent ringing. Claire looked at the three confused faces in front of her. "There it is. It's arrived. Go on, Chad. Your guests have arrived." But Chad didn't move. Karen and Tiffany just stared at Claire, bewildered. "Guests? What other guests?" Claire sighed. "Fine, I'll get it." She walked past the three of them and headed for the front door. Her heart was pounding, but not with fear. It was the thrill of knowing the main event was about to begin. Claire's steps were light as she walked from the dining room to the front door. Behind her, a tense silence fell over Chad, Karen, and Tiffany. They were frozen in place like three confused statues. Their insults about the lentil soup now hung forgotten in the air. All eyes were fixed on the solid wooden door as if behind it lay the answer to all the universe's mysteries. Claire turned the key. The door swung open noiselessly. Outside, under the soft glow of the porch light, there was no food delivery driver. There were three men. The one in the center was the most striking. He was tall, in his late 40s, and radiated an undeniable aura of authority. He wore a custom-tailored dark gray suit that likely cost the equivalent of 3 months of Chad's new salary. Thin framed glasses rested on his nose, and his hair, just starting to gray at the temples, was impeccably styled. He looked at Claire not with the familiarity of a guest, but with the profound respect of a professional. On either side of him were two younger men similarly dressed. Each held an identical aluminum briefcase. The cases glinted under the light, looking heavy and important. "Good evening, Mrs. Collins," the man in the center said. His voice was deep calm and practiced, each syllable pronounced with precision. Inside, Tiffany was the first to react. "Who are they?" she whispered to Karen. "They're not delivery guys. Friends of Claire's. Why do they look so important?" Karen shushed her. "Quiet, let's see what happens." Chad, for his part, was beginning to feel uneasy. Something was wrong, very wrong. This was no longer about dinner. He felt his newly acquired aura of authority as a director suddenly evaporating. Claire gave the man a slight smile. "Good evening, Mr. Pierce. Please come in. You're right on time." The man, Mr. Pierce, nodded once. He and his two assistants stepped over the threshold. They did not remove their shoes as they were spotless and gleaming. Their steps were firm and confident on the expensive marble floor. They walked right past Chad, Karen, and Tiffany as if they were invisible furniture. They stopped in the center of the living room facing the table set with Claire's humble meal. Chad felt his blood boil. Ignored in his own house. "Hold on a minute," Chad shouted, his voice echoing off the high walls. "Who are you people, Claire? Who are these people? Who did you invite into this house without my permission?" Karen and Tiffany, though, startled by Chad's outburst, immediately nodded in agreement. "That's right, what disrespect, walking into someone else's house like they own the place." Mr. Pierce didn't even turn to face Chad. His gaze remained fixed on Claire, awaiting instructions. Claire looked at her husband. The serenity on her face enraged Chad even more. "Chad, this is Mr. Pierce, my attorney. He has an important matter to discuss tonight." "What important matter?" Chad snapped. "I'm having dinner with my family. If he has business, he can come back tomorrow through my secretary." He tried to use his new status, but it sounded hollow even to his own ears. Mr. Pierce finally turned, but not to Chad, to Karen and Tiffany. His look was cold and analytical. Then he glanced at the table. "Lentil soup," he murmured quietly, as if to himself. "Haven't seen that in a while." Then he turned to Chad, sizing him up from head to toe. He saw the new suit, the expensive watch. An almost imperceptible look of amusement crossed his face before it returned to a mask of impassivity. "Good evening, sir." Mr. Pierce paused as if he had forgotten Chad's name. "Chad," Chad yelled. "I'm Chad Collins, the owner of this house." "Ah, Mr. Collins, Mr. Pierce said, his voice still calm, not at all intimidated. "I am Attorney Pierce, and these are my two associates. I'm sorry to interrupt your lentil soup dinner." The subtle jab hit its mark perfectly. Chad's face turned red with rage. "What do you mean by that? If you don't have important business, get out. I said get out." "Oh, the business is very important, Mr. Collins," Mr. Pierce replied. He gave a small signal. One of his associates placed an aluminum briefcase on the coffee table and opened it with a satisfying click. Inside there was no food. The case was filled with thick stacks of documents. "Claire." Chad now spun on his wife. His voice was threatening. "What is all this? What are you pulling? Are you deliberately trying to humiliate me in front of my mother and sister? You don't like that. I want to separate our finances. Do you?" "Quite the contrary, honey," Claire answered softly. "I completely agree with your decision. In fact, I wanted to make it official." Confusion washed over Chad. "Official?" Mr. Pierce stepped in. "Exactly. Mrs. Collins anticipated this situation." He walked toward Chad. His aura of authority was so dense that Chad instinctively took a step back. "You said you were having dinner with your guests," Mr. Pierce said, his voice now resonating in the suddenly silent room. "You also said this was your house." "Of course it's my house," Chad growled. Then Mr. Pierce stopped 3 feet from Chad and looked him directly in the eye. "You will be very surprised to learn the purpose of our visit." Chad swallowed hard. A chill ran down his spine. "What is it? What the hell do you want?" Mr. Pierce smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator that has cornered its prey. "I'm sorry, Mr. Collins," he said, his voice loud and clear so everyone in the room, even a petrified Karen and Tiffany, could hear. "We have come here under the instruction of Mrs. Claire Collins, the legal owner of this house, Mr. Pierce paused, letting the tension build to a peak, "to begin foreclosure proceedings on the assets held in your name." Those words hung in the air like a thick storm cloud. Foreclosure proceedings on the assets held in your name. The silence that followed was so total, so absolute, that the ticking of the grandfather clock in the study sounded like a drumbeat. And then the silence was broken, by one voice, then another. "Ah!" It was Karen's shriek. Not a yell of anger, but a high-pitched, hysterical screech filled with disbelief and horror. Her hands clutched her chest, her eyes wide as she stared from Mr. Pierce to Claire. "A foreclosure!" The second sound came from Chad. It was more of a wounded animal's roar. His eyes were bloodshot, staring at Claire with pure hatred. "What is the meaning of this, Claire? This is my house. The house I bought? Are you insane?" Tiffany, for her part, could only cover her mouth with both hands. Her face, once arrogant, was now ashen. Her dream of a European shopping spree had just turned into a nightmare of living in a studio apartment. "You she-devil!" Karen, regaining her composure, lunged forward immediately, her finger pointing at Claire's face. "You're trying to steal my son's property, you venomous snake. After living like a queen thanks to Chad, now you want to rob him of everything." She tried to pounce on Claire, but one of Mr. Pierce's associates moved with surprising speed. Without touching Karen, he simply stepped between her and her daughter-in-law, a silent but solid human shield. Karen had to stop in her tracks. "Her son's property!" Mr. Pierce's calm voice cut through Karen's shrieks. He was utterly unfazed by the chaos. He walked over to the open briefcase and pulled out a thick blue folder. "Mr. Collins!" Chad, still panting with rage, glared at him with murderous eyes. "You said this was your house." "Of course it is," Chad roared. "I signed the mortgage, I paid the installments." "Ah, yes." Mr. Pierce smiled faintly. "I'm afraid your memory is failing you." He opened the folder. "Property deed number 2457, corresponding to this plot of land and building. Land area 1.5 acres. Built area 5,000 square feet." He held up an original document and showed it to Chad. "In the name of Mrs. Claire Collins." Chad froze. "Impossible. That's a fake. You forged it." Mr. Pierce chuckled. "Mr. Collins, this document was issued by the county clerk's office. Please note the date. 3 months before you and Mrs. Collins were married." Chad's world began to spin. "Before the marriage?" "Exactly," Mr. Pierce said. "This house was purchased and paid for in cash by Mrs. Collins long before she met you. You did not sign any mortgage. You did not pay any installments. You, Mr. Collins, have been a simple tenant." The last phrase, "a simple tenant," hit Chad harder than any slap. "No, impossible," Chad whispered. He looked at Claire. "Claire, tell them it's not true." You said this was the house we bought together." Claire finally spoke. Her voice was still soft, but now it had an icy edge. "I never said that, honey. You were the one who assumed it. You were always too busy bragging to everyone that you had bought this house. I simply didn't correct you." "But what about the cars?" Chad yelled, grasping for something to hold on to. "My sports car, I picked it out, I bought it." Mr. Pierce, as if expecting this, took a second folder from his assistant, a red one. "You're referring to the luxury sports car and the SUV in the garage, correct? Both paid in cash, and both the title and the bill of sale are—" Mr. Pierce held up another document. "In the name of Mrs. Claire Collins. In fact," Mr. Pierce added, "the annual property taxes on them were paid from Mrs. Collins's personal account. You have simply been using them, Mr. Collins." "And this furniture!" Karen shrieked now in a panic. "This imported sofa, that huge TV, Chad bought all of it." Mr. Pierce sighed as if tired of their stupidity. "Mrs. Miller, I regret to inform you, but the purchase receipts for all the luxury furniture in this house, from the silverware to the master bedroom mattress you have slept on, were all paid in full by the credit card in the name of Mrs. Claire Collins." Again, silence. But this time it wasn't a tense silence. It was a deathly silence. The death of ego, arrogance, and greed. Chad sank weakly onto the imported sofa that didn't belong to him. He stared at the marble floor that didn't belong to him. He was gasping. His past 5 years of life, his salary, his promotion, it all felt like a sham. He looked at Claire, the wife he had always considered simple, submissive, a woman who only knew how to play in the dirt. That face now seemed so alien, so powerful. "Why?" Chad whispered. "Why, Claire? Why are you doing this?" Claire looked at him. "You started this, honey, last night when you said we should separate our finances. I'm just honoring your request." Chad shook his head, still trying to find a loophole. "But I have money too. I worked. I supported you. My money. With my money, I renovated this house. I maintained this." Mr. Pierce smiled again. His smile was growing wider. "Ah, you speak of money, Mr. Collins." He gave another signal. The other associate stepped forward, opening the second briefcase. "I'm glad you brought it up," Mr. Pierce said. This time, he didn't pull out a folder. He pulled out a single sheet of paper, just one. "You're right, you have spent money, but not on this house." Mr. Pierce slowly approached the seated Chad and held the paper in front of his face. "This is the invoice for your personal debt to Mrs. Collins." Chad looked at the paper with glazed eyes. He saw the number on the bottom line, and Mr. Pierce continued, his voice now sounding like a judge's sentence. "This is the breakdown. The cost of renovating your parents' house back home, the seed capital for Tiffany's 3 failed businesses, your lifestyle, your supplementary credit cards, luxury watches, and all the clubs you secretly frequented." Mr. Pierce leaned in, looking Chad directly in the eye. "The total debt you owe your wife, Mr. Collins, is $165,000. $165,000. The number buzzed in Chad's ears like a church bell ringing right next to him. $165,000 was a sum he couldn't even fathom. His new $9,000 salary would take years to pay it off, and that was assuming he didn't eat or drink. Chad finally spoke, his voice hoarse, almost a whisper. "I didn't sign any loan documents. I never borrowed money from you, Claire. This is a trap. It's all a trap." "A trap?" Mr. Pierce raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Collins did, Mrs. Collins need to ask you to sign anything when she paid for the complete renovation of your mother's house." Karen, who had been hysterical, suddenly went quiet, looking at Mr. Pierce with wary eyes. 3 years ago," Mr. Pierce continued, his calm voice now feeling like a conviction. He held up the first page of the breakdown. "Complete renovation of Mrs. Karen Miller's house. You told Mrs. Collins it was a gift from a devoted son. You told your mother it was the fruit of your own sweat and effort. But in reality," Mr. Pierce showed the paper to Chad, "here is the proof of the $55,000 wire transfer from Mrs. Collins's account to the contractor you yourself designated. Do you remember Mr. Collins?" Chad's face lost all its color. He remembered clearly how he had puffed out his chest to the neighbors back home, saying he had built a new palace for his mother. And then Mr. Pierce turned to Tiffany. Tiffany, who had been hiding behind her mother, flinched instantly. "Miss Miller, you may recall that 2.5 years ago you wanted to open a boutique," Tiffany stammered. $22,000 in startup capital," Mr. Pierce read from the document. "It failed in 6 months. Then you wanted to open a trendy coffee shop, another $16,500 in capital. It failed again within a year. And then you wanted to be a travel influencer, tickets, hotels, equipment, another $16,500. You told everyone it was an investment from your successful brother." Mr. Pierce stared hard at Tiffany. "A total of $55,000, all transferred from Mrs. Collins's account. Here it is." He held up a copy of the transactions. Memo on the transfer, capital for Tiffany's business, and support for sister-in-law. Karen and Tiffany were now silent. Their faces, once arrogant, were now filled with fear. They realized they weren't just guests. They were accomplices. And, "You, Mr. Collins," Mr. Pierce refocused on his main target, the remaining $55,000. "Do you want me to detail the list?" Chad didn't answer. He just stared at the cold marble floor. "Very well, I will detail it," Mr. Pierce said. "The luxury golf club membership you claim the company paid for. No, Miss Collins paid for it. The luxury watch you're wearing right now, which you said was a bonus from your boss. No, Mrs. Collins bought it. Not to mention the bills from the clubs you secretly frequented, the expensive drinks, and the rounds for your friends there." "Enough," Chad shouted. His ears were red. Every time he came home at 3 a.m., he'd say he was working late on a project. In reality, he was squandering his wife's money. His wife knew, Mr. Pierce concluded. She received all the bills and paid for everything to maintain his good name, the reputation of Director Chad Collins. The silence that followed was even more suffocating than before. Chad, Karen, and Tiffany now realized this wasn't a simple foreclosure. It was a total demolition of all their lies. Chad lifted his head. His eyes were red, but they were not tears of remorse. They were tears of rage and confusion. He looked at Claire, who seemed so strange to him. "Where?" Chad whispered. "Where did you get all this money, Claire? Do you have a sugar daddy?" It was the last insult he could throw, the most desperate accusation. Karen, hearing this, seemed to draw new strength. Of course, it's obvious. A decent woman can't have this much money. You've been doing dirty things behind my son's back, haven't you? Claire, who had only observed until now, finally stepped forward. She was no longer hiding behind Mr. Pierce. She was now in front, looking Chad directly in the eye. Her simple house dress now seemed like a royal robe. "I've been doing dirty things," Claire repeated, her voice calm, but carrying a strength Chad had never heard before. "I have a sugar daddy." She laughed, a slow, dry laugh filled with irony. Chad, in the 5 years we've been married, have you ever once asked me who I really am?" "You're Claire, my wife," Chad said, confused. "I'm Claire, that's correct. But have you ever asked who my parents are? What my job was before I married you? Have you ever asked what was on that laptop I always had open at night when you thought I was watching soap operas?" Chad couldn't answer. He had never asked. He didn't care. To him, Claire was just a woman he met at an event. She seemed innocent, submissive, perfect for a housewife. "You assumed I came from a humble family so you could look down on me," Claire said. "You assumed I was stupid so you could cheat me. You assumed I had nothing so you could trample all over me. The reality, honey—" Claire took a deep breath. "I'm an investor. Long before I met you, I started my investment portfolio right out of college. Real estate, stocks, startups. I'm what people call an angel investor." Mr. Pierce nodded. "Mrs. Collins is one of the most respected investors in her circle. She simply chose to maintain a low profile. This house," Claire gestured around her, "is nothing. It's just one of my smallest assets, an asset I deliberately prepared for our married life." "I don't believe you." Chad shook his head. "You don't have to believe me. Mr. Pierce has the proof." Claire looked at her husband. There was disappointment in her eyes, but no longer any love. "I wanted to live a normal life, honey. I was tired of the business world. I wanted a sincere husband. I wanted to start a family. That's why I chose you. I thought your simplicity back then was sincerity. I gave you everything. I gave you a house, cars, a lifestyle you could never have dreamed of, and I asked for nothing in return. I only asked you to be loyal and honest. But what did you do? The more I gave you, the greedier you became. The more I kept quiet, the more powerful you felt. You brought your family to humiliate me in my own house. You used my money to fund your sister's laziness. You used my money to renovate your mother's house and lied that it was the fruit of your effort. And last night," Claire's eyes sharpened, "that was the last straw. With your new $9,000 salary, you felt like a king. You felt you didn't need me anymore. You said with arrogance, 'Each of us will manage our own finances.' Fine, honey. I will grant your wish." Chad swallowed hard. "Claire, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Please, forgive me." "It's too late," Claire cut him off. "You already made your decision, and I have made mine. Go on." A cynical smile Chad had never seen before appeared on Claire's lips. "You were so proud of your promotion, weren't you? A $9,000 a month salary. You felt on top of the world." Chad was silent. "Did you ever wonder," Claire moved closer, whispering, "what company you work for and who the major client is that just saved your company from the brink of bankruptcy?" Confusion. It was the only expression left on Chad's face. Claire's question seemed irrelevant. What did his promotion have to do with this marital issue with a $165,000 debt? "What do you mean?" Chad asked, his voice weak. "What client?" "Don't change the subject, Claire. That has nothing to do with me." "Oh, it has everything to do with me, honey." This time it was Mr. Pierce who stepped forward again. He seemed to relish his role as the bearer of bad news. He looked at Chad with the expression of a professor addressing the dimmest student in the class. "Mr. Collins," Mr. Pierce began, his tone formal. "You work for a construction company called Sun Valley Construction, Inc. Is that correct?" Chad nodded hesitantly. "Yes, of course. The best construction company in the city." He tried to gather the remaining shreds of his pride. "The best," Mr. Pierce chuckled, "the best company that was on the verge of bankruptcy 6 months ago. a company whose 3 major projects were stalled due to mismanagement, a company that couldn't pay its employees' salaries for the last 2 months until an emergency loan saved it by a hair's breadth. Chad's face turned white as a sheet. That was a company secret, information only senior management knew. How could Claire and this lawyer know you'll know? Mr. Pierce continued, not giving Chad time to breathe, that when all the directors had given up, ready to sell off assets and liquidate the company, a miracle happened. Last week. Chad held his breath. He knew exactly what had happened last week. A massive holdings company, Mr. Pierce said, a highly respected investment group from Southeast Asia, appeared out of nowhere. Not only did they buy up your company's debt, but they injected fresh capital. They offered a new project of immense value. Laura and Karen just watched, not understanding the direction of this conversation. But Chad understood. He had been in that presentation. A $3.3 billion project, Mr. Pierce stated, the largest resort development project in the state, an exclusive 10-year contract for Sun Valley Construction. Correct, Mr. Collins. Chad nodded stiffly. And thanks to your dedication and loyalty, all these years, Mr. Pierce made air quotes, you were suddenly promoted from senior site supervisor to director. Not just any director, but director of special projects, in charge of this new, very important client with a fantastic salary of $9,000. Right. It was a coincidence, Chad whispered. My boss said my performance was the best. Your performance? This time it was Claire who cut through her husband's fantasy. Your performance was mediocre, honey. Below average even. Your reports were always late. You spent more time on the golf course than on the construction site. How do you know that? Chad yelled. Because, Claire said quietly, the company that saved you, that massive holdings company, has a name. Chad waited, trembling with fear. It's called Atlas Holdings, Claire said. Chad frowned. Atlas Holdings. He'd never heard that name. You might not know the name Atlas Holdings, Claire said, because that's just the name of the parent company. She looked at Mr. Pierce. Mr. Pierce smiled. He gave a slight bow to Claire, then turned back to Chad. Mr. Collins. Mrs. Miller, Miss Miller, allow me to introduce you. He extended his arm, gesturing to the simply dressed woman in the center of the room. The person before you is the founder, sole owner, and chief executive officer of Atlas Holdings, Mrs. Claire Collins. If a nuclear bomb had gone off in that living room, the effect could not have been more devastating. Karen staggered backward and collapsed onto the floor. Her eyes were wide, her mouth agape, but no sound came out. Tiffany let out a choked cry. Impossible! She clutched her mother's arm, her body shaking violently. She had just realized she didn't owe her brother-in-law money. She owed $55,000 to a CEO. And Chad. Chad didn't fall, didn't scream. He just stood there petrified. All the blood seemed to drain from his face. Director, $9,000 salary, investor wife, $165,000 debt, CEO of Atlas Holdings. All the puzzle pieces that didn't fit now snapped together in his head, forming a picture so terrible, so humiliating. Then, Chad stammered, my promotion. Your promotion, Claire said, her voice cold and emotionless, was not because of your performance. Your promotion was my condition. When I agreed to acquire Sun Valley Construction, I gave the board a small condition. Claire continued as if telling a fairy tale. I said, promote my husband Chad Collins. Give him the highest position you can. Give him the biggest salary he could dream of. Chad stared at her. Why? Claire smiled, the most painful smile Chad had ever seen. It was my final test for you, honey. I gave you luxury, but you didn't value it. I gave you loyalty, but you betrayed it. I gave you love, but you trampled it. So I decided to give you one last thing. The thing I knew you desired most in this world. Power, money, status. I wanted to see, Claire whispered, her eyes piercing Chad, what you would do with it. I wanted to know if after receiving a $9,000 salary, you would come home, hug me, thank me, and say, Claire, we made it. Thank you for being with me from the bottom up. Claire's eyes began to well with tears, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of long-suppressed anger. Or, she continued, would you come home, ignore me, belittle me, and say, from now on, my salary is going straight into my account. We'll each manage our own finances. Chad couldn't breathe. You chose the second option, honey, Claire concluded. You chose to separate your finances from the woman who had just given you those finances. You failed Chad. You failed the final test. A total silence filled the room. Karen lay unconscious on the floor. Tiffany was crying silently. Chad stood like a corpse. And into that deathly silence, one sound cut through everything. The ringing of a cell phone. Ring, ring, ring. All eyes except for the unconscious Karen snapped to the coffee table. Chad's phone was vibrating violently. On the illuminated screen, one name blinked with a terrifying glow. President. Chad stared at the phone as if it were a snake. He knew this wasn't a call to congratulate him on his promotion. It was an execution call. Mr. Pierce glanced at the phone and gave a slight smile to Claire. Ah, he said. It seems the news has already spread. The phone continued to vibrate on the coffee table, its buzzing against the glass surface, creating a sound sharper than the ringtone itself. President. The name flashed with an ominous blue light in the silent room. Chad stared at it as if it were a cobra's head poised to strike. His world had crumbled in an instant. The wife he thought was simple was a CEO. The house he took pride in was just a rental. The $9,000 salary he boasted about was a test, and he had failed spectacularly. Now, with the head of the Atlas Holdings legal team in his living room, the president of his company was calling him. Chad knew it wasn't to congratulate him. Chad, answer it. Maybe... Tiffany whispered, her voice trembling as she nudged his arm. Maybe what? There was no hope left. Karen was still on the floor, out cold. Perhaps it was the best thing that could have happened to her. At least she wouldn't have to witness her son's total downfall. Mr. Pierce and his two associates simply watched. Claire was silent too, her face serene as if watching a play whose ending she already knew. With a hand that shook so violently he could barely control it, Chad reached out mistakenly, tapping the screen twice, before managing to slide the green icon. He put the phone to his ear. Hello, Mr. President? His voice came out broken, more a mouse's squeak than a director's roar. A few seconds of silence, and then, Chad, where are you? What have you done? Are you insane? The voice on the other end was not that of a dignified president. It was the hysterical shriek of a terrified man on the verge of a breakdown. It was so loud and shrill that even Tiffany and Mr. Pierce could hear it clearly in the quiet room. Mr. President? Chad stammered. I'm at home, sir. What's wrong? He was still trying to act normal out of reflex. Home. What home are you talking about, Chad? The president sounded like he was about to have a heart attack. The legal team from Atlas Holdings misses. Collins's legal team just sent an emergency email to the board of directors and all the shareholders. What did you do to Mrs. Collins? Chad, tell me, what have you done? Chad swallowed hard. His gaze drifted from the phone to Mr. Pierce, then to Claire. Legal team, he whispered. Claire stepped forward. That's right, Chad, she said, her calm voice cutting through the president's screams. It seems you don't know Mr. Pierce very well. Chad looked at Mr. Pierce in horror. Did you think, Claire continued, that Mr. Pierce came here just to collect a $165,000 debt? Mr. Pierce smiled faintly. Mr. Collins, when you so arrogantly declared the separation of assets in the dining room last night, you forgot one thing. Mr. Pierce gestured around the room. This house, to protect Mrs. Collins's valuable assets, is equipped with a state-of-the-art security system. That includes audio and video recording in all common areas. The last trace of color drained from Chad's face. Recording. The audio recording from last night is crystal clear, Mr. Collins, Mr. Pierce said. We could hear every word plainly. From now on, my salary is going straight into my account. You just take care of your needs with the household money. You do nothing but play in the dirt. And my personal favorite, good that you know your place. The president on the other end of the phone was still screaming. Chad, do you know who Mrs. Collins is? She owns our company, the person who bought this company, the person who gave you your salary, and you insulted her. You treated her. The president's voice broke. With a calm motion, Claire took the phone from Chad's limp hand. He didn't even try to stop her. Claire put the phone to her ear. Good evening, Mr. President, she said, her voice clear and cold. This is Claire Collins. I apologize for the interruption. The reaction on the other end was instantaneous. The screaming stopped. There was a sound of gagging, followed by a hasty cough. Mrs. Collins, oh my God, ma'am, I am so sorry, ma'am. I had no idea, ma'am. None of us knew. I didn't know this man was your husband. If I had known, I never would have. Calm yourself, Mr. President. Claire cut her off. Her tone was not kind. You are not at fault. I was the one who requested my identity be kept secret even from my husband. I was merely conducting a small experiment. Experiment, ma'am. Yes, and the results are now in. Claire looked at Chad, who was now trembling uncontrollably. Mr. President, I want to confirm one thing. Anything, ma'am. Say anything. I want to confirm, Claire said, that the trash needs to be taken out of the company immediately. A moment of silence as the president processed the words. The trash, you mean, Chad. Of course, ma'am. Of course. Right now, ma'am. He's no longer part of our company. He's fired. Fired? I didn't ask you to fire him, Mr. President, Claire said softly. The president was confused again. Oh, I understand, ma'am. Then what should we do? We'll do anything. Firing him is too easy, Claire said. He could find work somewhere else. I don't want that. I ask. Claire continued, her voice now turning into a lethal whisper, that you ensure he never works again. Not in your company, not in any of its subsidiaries, and not in any construction sector company that is a partner of Atlas Holdings. Claire paused, letting the threat sink in. And as you know, Mr. President, we own all the partners in this industry. A sharp intake of breath was heard on the other end of the line. The president knew exactly what that meant. Atlas Holdings hadn't just acquired Sun Valley. They owned the supply chain, the subcontractors, even the architectural design firms. With one word from Claire, Chad would vanish from the industry. I will do it, ma'am. Understood. I will personally see to it. Complete blacklist. No one will touch him. Please forgive our negligence, ma'am. Good, Claire said. I expect the paperwork on Mr. Pierce's desk tomorrow morning. Claire didn't wait for a reply. She pressed the red icon on the screen. Ended the call. Ended Chad's career. She placed the phone back on the coffee table. Chad stared at the phone. He wasn't angry, he didn't scream. He was just empty. A $9,000 salary, the director position, status pride. All of it had just been destroyed in a 3-minute phone call. Gone broken. A salary he never even got to collect, a position he didn't enjoy for 24 hours. Tiffany, who had heard everything, began to sob. Not a cry of sadness, but of utter despair. We're finished. Finished. We're finished. Chad, who had been standing rigidly, finally lost what little strength he had left. His knees buckled. He didn't fall, but he stumbled, crashing into the coffee table. His nerveless hand accidentally knocked his own phone. It slid off the glass table and hit the marble floor with a loud, final crack. The screen shattered into 1,000 pieces. Just like Chad's life, the silence that followed the phone's crash was even heavier. That resonant crack seemed to mark the end of an era. The era of Chad's lies, the era of Claire's patience. Now the only sound was Tiffany's choked sobs and Chad's ragged, shallow breathing. Mr. Pierce glanced at his wristwatch. Well, he said, his voice calm and professional, as if he had just concluded a routine meeting. Everything has gone according to plan. He turned to Claire. Mrs. Collins, what are your next instructions? Claire didn't look at Mr. Pierce. Her eyes were fixed on Chad. She saw the man she once loved, now reduced to an empty shell. Then her gaze fell on the terrified, weeping Tiffany, and on Karen, still unconscious on the floor. "Mr. Pierce," Claire said, her voice once again cold and resolute. "Chad made his wishes very clear last night. We'll each manage our own finances. He's no longer my husband in the sense that I must support him, and since he now has no job, he obviously cannot pay his $165,000 debt." Chad flinched at the word debt. He had just realized that losing his job was only the beginning of his nightmare. "Therefore," Claire continued, "I see no reason why She glanced at Karen and Tiffany, "and his guests should continue to remain on my property. If the firing was the nuclear bomb, this sentence was the shockwave that leveled any remaining structures." "Out." Chad finally found his voice. It was a desperate roar. "Claire, are you kicking me out? You're kicking out your husband." "Husband." Claire looked at him, her eyes narrowing. "What husband, honey? The husband who humiliated me in front of his family, the husband who cheated me out of my own money, or the husband who just got fired because of his own arrogance?" Mr. Pierce stepped between them. "Technically, Mr. Collins, you are not being kicked out. You are simply being asked to vacate a property that does not belong to you. Mrs. Collins will be filing for divorce tomorrow morning. The grounds will be abandonment and embezzlement." Mr. Pierce pointed at Chad. "And we will also immediately file a civil suit for your $165,000 debt." Divorce. Debt. A hoarse voice came from the floor. Karen, roused by the words divorce and debt, slowly sat up. She looked confused, blinking. "Chad? What's happening?" Tiffany rushed to her. "Mom. Oh, Mom, they're kicking us out." The word "kicking out" seemed to bring Karen to full consciousness. "Kicking us out?" she screamed, seeing Claire and Mr. Pierce. "From my son's house, impossible the nerve." "Claire, you evil snake. After stealing all my son's fortune, now you throw him out. You are a demon in a house dress." With unexpected strength, Karen got to her feet and tried to lunge at Claire. Mr. Pierce didn't blink. He simply spoke quietly into the communicator on his lapel. "Team, move in." The front door, which had been closed, swung open. Two large, burly security guards in black uniforms entered quietly. They didn't look like thugs. They looked like professionals trained to handle difficult situations. They stood silently by the door like statues, but their presence filled the room. Karen's attack stopped cold. Tiffany choked back a scream. This was real. This wasn't a family drama anymore. It was an actual eviction. Tiffany, realizing it was the end, suddenly remembered something. My purse, my things. She ran to the sofa where she had tossed her bag. She started gathering her belongings, her wallet, her phone, the case for a pair of expensive sunglasses. "I'm sorry, Miss Miller." Mr. Pierce's voice stopped her. "What now?" Tiffany screamed. "These are my things. I brought them from home." "The purse is yours, certainly," Mr. Pierce said. "But its contents—" He pointed to the latest model phone in Tiffany's hand. That phone, that leather wallet, those sunglasses, all were purchased with the supplementary credit card whose bill Mrs. Collins paid in full. Mr. Pierce looked at Tiffany coldly. "Those items are part of your $55,000 debt. You cannot take them. Please leave them. You may take only the empty purse." "No," Tiffany cried. "It's mine." One of Mr. Pierce's assistants stepped forward with a small tray. He said nothing, simply offered the tray to Tiffany. Under the cold gaze of the legal team and the two large security guards, Tiffany, sobbing, had no choice but to empty the contents of her purse one by one. The wallet, the phone, and expensive lipstick all were placed on the tray. It was a humiliation more painful than any shout. "I'm not leaving!" Karen returned to hysteria. She wrapped her arms tightly around the back of the imported sofa. "This is my son's house. I'm not leaving." Mr. Pierce signaled to the two security guards. "Please help this lady out," he said. "Gently, she's distressed." The two guards moved. They weren't rough. They were very professional. "Excuse me, ma'am. Let's go," one said. "No, let go of me. Don't touch me, Chad." "Chad, help your mother, son. They're throwing me out." But Chad didn't move. He stood there, stunned, empty. He watched as his mother was politely but firmly held by both arms and led toward the exit. Tiffany, now clutching her empty purse, followed her mother, tears streaming down her cheeks. Karen's screams and Tiffany's sobs filled the house, slowly fading as they were escorted past the front door and outside. Now in the spacious living room, only Claire, her team, and Chad remained. Chad was still standing near the broken phone on the floor. "Mr. Collins." Mr. Pierce's voice softened now, as if with a touch of pity. "It's your turn." Chad slowly lifted his head. His eyes were red. He looked at Claire. It was his last attempt. "Claire," he whispered. "Honey, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Please." He tried to take a step forward. "Don't do this, Claire. This is our home. I love you. I'll change. I promise." Claire looked at him. She walked up to Chad, stopping right in front of him. She could smell the fear coming off her husband. "Love?" Claire repeated, her voice quiet. "You don't know the meaning of love, honey. You only loved money. You only loved status. And now you have neither." "Patience has a limit," Claire said. "And you broke that limit last night." Claire turned, walked to a small drawer near the front door, opened it, and took something out. A man's leather wallet, old, thin, worn in many places. She walked back to Chad and tossed it at his feet. The wallet landed on the marble floor with a pathetic, dull thud. "Do you remember that wallet?" Claire asked. "It was yours when we met. The wallet you threw away when you started earning more, saying it wasn't up to your standard." Chad stared at the wallet. "I kept it," Claire said. "I don't know why. A souvenir, perhaps. It's not empty." Claire continued. "Pick it up." With trembling hands, Chad bent down and picked up the old wallet. He opened it. Inside were 2 $20 bills. "Here," Claire said, her voice flat and emotionless. "There's some money inside. Enough for the 3 of you to take a cab." That humiliation was the final blow. Not a shout, not a slap, an act of pity. $40 for the man who that morning had been boasting about a $9,000 salary. That finally broke Chad. He didn't beg anymore. He wasn't angry anymore. He felt a shame so intense, so burning, that he could no longer look at Claire. Clutching the old wallet, Chad turned. He walked. He didn't run. He walked with heavy steps past Mr. Pierce and his associates toward the open door. He stepped out onto the porch. Outside beyond the gate, under the dim light of the street lamps, he could see his mother and Tiffany. His mother was hitting Tiffany's arm, and Tiffany was crying. They looked small and pathetic. The tall iron gate began to close automatically. Claire stood behind the living room window, watching the 3 of them. They were huddled on the sidewalk now. Karen seemed to be screaming at Chad. Chad just stood there, silently, head bowed, clutching the wallet in his hand. The door behind Claire closed softly. Mr. Pierce was there. "It's done, Mrs. Collins," he said quietly. "They're out." Claire didn't turn. She was still looking out at the street. She closed her eyes for a moment. "Not yet," she whispered to her reflection in the glass. "This is just the beginning." 1 month passed. For some time heals. For others, it deepens the wounds. For Claire, this month was a process of liberation. On the 45th floor of the Atlas Holdings Tower in the main glass-walled boardroom, Claire presided over the board meeting. She was no longer wearing a house dress. Today, she wore a perfectly tailored sapphire blue pantsuit. Her appearance was flawless and professional. Before her sat 12 senior executives, including Mr. Pierce, who now acted as chief counsel for all her business lines. "I've received the integration report on Sun Valley Construction." Claire's voice was calm but firm, filling the silent room. "I appreciate the work of the transition team. However," she pressed a button, and a budget chart appeared on the large screen before her. "I've noticed an inflated expenditure in the consultant's line item. Mr. Pierce, didn't we agree to cut all inefficient costs? All eyes were on her." The woman who a month ago was quietly watering plants and cooking lentil soup was now grilling multi-million-dollar professionals. She was sharp, meticulous, and relentless. She was the embodiment of true power. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to boast. Her authority emanated from every word she spoke. "I want a full audit report on my desk by the day after tomorrow," she said, closing the topic. "Next item, the $3.3 billion resort project. We need to accelerate the start of construction." This was Claire Collins, the CEO of Atlas Holdings. She was back in her domain. The house, which had felt like a prison to her, was now clean. She had taken out the trash. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, in an alley so narrow a car couldn't even enter, the smell of sewage mixed with that of rotting garbage. This is where the trash had landed. In a 10 by 10-foot room, Chad, Karen, and Tiffany were living their new hell. There was no air conditioning. A small, yellowed fan on a table turned weakly, blowing the same hot air around. The thin plywood walls let them clearly hear every sound from the next room: a baby crying, a couple fighting. Claire's $40 had run out in 3 days to pay the rent for this room and buy some rice. Chad sat in a corner of the room, leaning against the damp wall. He wore only a dirty t-shirt and shorts. His face, once well-groomed, was now covered by a scruffy beard. His eyes were sunken and empty. He had tried. Oh, he had tried. He tried to contact his golfing buddies, but his number was blocked. He tried to contact his colleagues from Sun Valley, but they pretended not to know him. He tried to apply for jobs at other construction companies, but as soon as they heard his name, Chad Collins, they either laughed or threw him out immediately. Claire's blacklist was working perfectly. He was poison. No one dared to touch him. "It's too hot," was Karen's complaint. She lay on a thin mat. The arrogant woman who once demanded luxury dinners now looked 10 years older. Her hair was greasy, her skin sallow. She just stared at the plywood ceiling, complaining endlessly. Tiffany, meanwhile, was washing plastic dishes in a basin. No more pretty nails or latest model phones. She had barely managed to buy detergent by selling her empty designer purse at a second-hand market. "This is all your fault, Chad." Karen suddenly started. Her voice was hoarse but full of hatred. Chad, who had been silent, flinched. "Why? Why me, Mom? Because of you. If you hadn't been so arrogant, if you hadn't been so stupid, a $9,000 salary. Who did you think you were? You got fired before you even collected it. You've shamed your mother. You've ruined our lives. My fault. Who came to my house uninvited, who insulted my food, who demanded the house renovation, who asked for capital for boutique and coffee shop businesses and ran them into the ground. It was you two." He pointed alternately at his mother and sister. You poisoned me. You made me feel like I always had to be better than her. You shamed me for having a wife like her. Oh, so now it's our fault." Tiffany threw a plastic plate into the basin. Dirty water splashed out. Chad was the weak one. Chad was the one who let himself be led. If you had really loved Claire, you wouldn't have cheated her. You wouldn't have insulted her. You were just greedy. "Cheated her!" Karen screamed. "Chad, you cheated on her too!" The fight erupted. The three of them, trapped in that hot box, now turned on each other. They blamed each other, bringing out all the rot and stench they had kept hidden. They were like crabs in a bucket, dragging each other down so no one could survive. For a week, they survived by selling the few belongings they had on them when they were thrown out. Chad's watch was a fake. The real one had already been taken by Mr. Pierce. Karen's gold wedding ring was the only thing left. It was sold for a week's worth of food. Chad finally had to do what he despised most. He went to the wholesale market before dawn and offered himself as a loader. The man who once wore designer suits now carried sacks of potatoes that smelled of dirt. He came home with his body aching, stinking of sweat, and with $5 in his hand. He threw the crumpled bill on the mat. "Eat," he growled. Tiffany took the money without a word, but Karen looked at Chad with disgust. "My son, a director, is now a loader," she sneered. "Better a loader than starving to death," Chad screamed back. Days turned into weeks. The fights were the daily menu, the insults were breakfast, and poverty was the blanket of the night. One afternoon, when Chad had just come home, he found Tiffany crying in a corner. "What now?" Chad asked. "Mom, it's Mom," Tiffany stammered. Chad saw Karen lying on her side, but her breathing was rough and gasping. Her face was pale, her lips bluish. "Mom!" Chad rushed to her, touched his mother's forehead. It was cold, but her body was drenched in sweat. "Mom, wake up. Mom." Karen slowly opened her eyes, looked at Chad. "Chad, I don't feel well. My chest hurts so much," she whispered. She clutched her chest, struggling to breathe. Panic, immense panic, seized Chad. Tiffany could only scream. "We have to get her to a hospital," Chad yelled. "In what, Chad?" Tiffany shrieked back. "We have no money, not even for a cab." Chad searched his pockets, empty. He wouldn't get paid until tomorrow. He looked around the small room. There was nothing left to sell. Nothing. Karen coughed, a painful, racking cough. Her eyes filled Chad with a fear that consumed him, the fear of death. Reality hit Chad. His arrogance, his hubris, the $9,000 salary he had idolized. It had all ended here. His mother might die in this room that stank of sewage, and he didn't even have money to buy her cough syrup. He looked at his dying mother. He looked at his hysterically crying sister. He looked at his own calloused, dirty hands, ruined. He was truly ruined. Desperation is the most potent fuel. Chad, who seconds ago was broken, now stood up with a new energy. The energy of a man with no options. "Look after Mom," he yelled at Tiffany. "Give her hot water. Don't let her fall asleep." "Where are you going, Chad?" "To get money." Chad didn't wait for a reply. He ran out of the room. He ran through the narrow alley, tripping over laundry lines and playing children. His mind was blank. He didn't know where to go. He only knew he had to get money. Tonight, right now. He tried to think of his friends. He had none. Family. They had all distanced themselves from him since his success. There was only one name, one single person who he knew for sure had money. Claire. He didn't know where Claire lived now. He assumed she would still be in their old house. It was his only destination. With the last of his strength, he ran to the main road. He had no money for a taxi. He ran. He ran 2 miles to the nearest bus stop. He snuck onto the bus, receiving insults from the driver. He didn't care. An hour later, he arrived at the wealthy neighborhood where his former house stood. He was soaked in sweat, panting, and looked like a homeless person. He ran to the gate of the luxurious house, but the house looked different, colder. "Hey, you! Where are you going?" 2 new security guards in uniform, much bigger than the previous ones, stopped him at the gate. I need to get in. This is my house," Chad shouted. The 2 guards looked at each other and then laughed. "Your house, buddy. You better leave before we call the cops. This is Atlas Holdings property. Nothing to do with people like you. I'm Chad Collins. I'm Claire's husband. I've come to see my wife." "Mrs. Collins doesn't live here anymore," one of the guards said, now irritated. "And even if she did, she wouldn't have a husband like you. Get lost." One of the guards pushed him. Chad fell to the asphalt. Failure. He had nowhere else to go. He knew where the Atlas Holdings offices were. He had seen the building from afar, but he knew with his current appearance he wouldn't get past the lobby. He sat on the sidewalk in front of the house that was once his palace. He buried his head in his knees. He was defeated. His mother was going to die. "God, what else can I do?" he whispered it. He sat there for hours. The night grew deeper. His stomach roared with hunger. He hadn't eaten anything since the morning. He remembered the restaurant at the luxury hotel down the street. He used to dine there often. He knew at this hour they would start throwing out the leftover food. Pride. He had none of that left. He got up and limped toward the luxury hotel. He snuck into the back parking area near the kitchen. He saw several large black trash bags. "Hey, what are you doing there?" a hotel security guard shouted. Chad was startled. I'm just hungry, looking for some leftover food." He was surprised at his own voice. It was the voice of a beggar. Just then, a black sedan, a Bentley, the most luxurious car Chad had ever seen, pulled out slowly from the main lobby. The tinted rear window lowered slowly. Inside, under the soft interior light, sat Claire. She was looking directly at him. Sitting next to her was Mr. Pierce. Time stood still. Claire, dressed in a cream-colored silk suit, looked like an angel. She was clean, perfumed, powerful. And Chad? Chad was trash, digging through trash. Their eyes met. Chad froze. An immense shame burned through him far more than the hunger and desperation. "Mr. Pierce, stop the car!" Claire's calm voice sounded from inside the car. Chad saw Claire say something to Mr. Pierce, and Mr. Pierce got out of the car. But that's not what Chad saw. What he saw was Claire. "She's seeing me like this." Suddenly, the image of his mother suffocating returned. To hell with pride, to hell with shame. "Claire!" Chad ran toward the car, dodging the hotel guards who tried to stop him. He banged on the window of the luxury car. "Claire, help me. Please help me, Claire." The hotel guards tried to pull him away. "Let him go." Claire's voice was heard calm but full of authority. The car door opened, but it wasn't Claire who got out. It was Mr. Pierce who held the door. "Claire, it's Mom. Mom is sick. She's dying, Claire. She can't breathe. I have no money. Please, I'm begging you. Save my mother. I don't care about anything else but help my mother." Chad cried. They were not fake tears. They were the sobs of a desperate son. He knelt on the asphalt next to the luxury car, clutching the door. Claire looked at him from inside the car. Her face showed no anger, no triumph. Her eyes held something far more painful for Chad. It was pity. She looked at Chad, dirty, smelly, kneeling at her feet, exactly as Chad had looked at her when she was playing in the dirt. The wheel had come full circle. Claire was silent for a moment, then spoke. Not to Chad. "Mr. Pierce?" "Understood, ma'am." Mr. Pierce, who was already expecting it, immediately took out his phone. "Call an ambulance to his room's address. Transfer Mrs. Miller to our partner hospital. Give her the best treatment, all expenses." Claire looked at Chad. "I will cover." Chad was stunned. Thank you, Claire. God bless you." "I'm not finished," Claire said. She finally looked at Chad, her gaze cold. "Mr. Pierce, also find a new room for Tiffany and her mother, a habitable place. Provide a monthly budget for simple food and living expenses for humanitarian reasons." Chad looked at her with eyes full of hope. "This is it. Claire still loves me. She'll forgive me. She'll take me back, and I will change. I'll be a good husband. Claire smiled, the same cynical smile she had shown him in the living room. She looked across the street, where a small commercial building construction project was still underway under floodlights. "Chad, you are an able-bodied man," Claire said, "and you still owe me $165,000. You also have to support your mother. Mr. Pierce, speak to the site supervisor on that project over there," Claire commanded. "Make sure Chad gets a job as a cement loader starting tomorrow morning." The hope instantly vanished from Chad's eyes. "A loader, Claire, but I have a college degree. I was a director. You were nothing." "Chad," Claire's voice rose for the first time, "a fake director living off his wife's money. Being a loader is an honest job, far more noble. You must learn what it is to earn money with your sweat. Not the sweat of the golf course, but the sweat under the sun." "You said it." Claire leaned slightly out of the car. "We'll each manage our own finances, right? I have kept my word. I have separated my life from yours. This," Claire gestured to Mr. Pierce, who was on the phone with the ambulance, "is not help from a wife. Your wife died a long time ago. This is charity, the compassion of a stranger who was passing by. Your mother and sister I help for humanitarian reasons. But you have to pay your debt. Work." Claire leaned back in her seat. "Enjoy the fruit of your labor, Chad. Driver, let's go," she said to her chauffeur. The car window rose slowly, closing like a curtain on a stage. Chad's pale, terrified face was the last thing Claire saw. The luxury car glided away silently, leaving Chad still kneeling on the asphalt. Mr. Pierce finished his call and patted Chad on the shoulder. "The ambulance is on its way, Mr. Collins," he said. "And congratulations. Your job starts tomorrow at 7 a.m. sharp. Don't be late." Chad didn't move. He watched the car disappear around the corner. He wasn't in jail. He wasn't dead. He was in a far more tailored kind of hell. A hell he had built for himself brick by arrogant brick. And now he was going to have to carry the cement.